Hello, students, and welcome back to week 4 of our first unit, Cells and Systems. This week we will be reviewing body systems, and we will go over every single body system with some quick notes, and then I'll introduce the final project, which you will have the rest of the time to work on. So, as always, our warm-up today will be to take 2 minutes to write about one thing you learned this week about body systems. Teachers, feel free to pause the video for 2 minutes to let the students write something, and maybe they have time to discuss, but uh, after 2 minutes, start the video again. So after you wrote something that you learned this week, we're going to look at what we did learn and some questions that hopefully you'll be able to answer after going through all the at-home activities. So first, with the circulatory system, what does it mean for something to circulate? Where are red blood cells created? And what path does blood take when traveling around your body? So hopefully you'll be answering these questions. And then for the respiratory system, what are alveoli and where are they located? Can you describe the process of breathing? What muscles are involved? And what path do oxygen molecules take when you breathe? And then for the digestive and excretory system, why do our mouths water when we eat food? How does food travel through your body? In what ways does waste leave our body? And finally, the last lesson we did was system review. And the ultimate question you want to answer with that is, how do all the body systems work? So here are all the systems that we've gone over for the past 2 weeks. We've got the nervous, skeletal, muscular, endocrine, excretory, digestive, respiratory, and circulatory. So, by the end of today and utilizing all your at-home activities, you should be able to at least give a general description of each and the important organs that are involved with each of these systems. So, notes. So, with these notes, just pay attention to the slides and fill in the blanks with the relative information. So, we'll be going through every single body system, and it'll be some general notes so you have a better idea of each one. If you want further instruction or notes, go back to your at home activities, and hopefully, those can give you more information. So, starting with the nervous system. The nervous system involves the brain and the spinal cord. And the nervous system is important because it coordinates the other body systems and regulates movement and emotions. Those are two examples of what the nervous system does. And then there's also the brain. And the brain has three main components: the cerebrum, which is the thinking part of the brain where conscious thought, memory, and reasoning occur. Then we have the brainstem, which controls involuntary movement like breathing, blood circulation, and digestion. Remember, involuntary is something that you don't control. So you don't manually breathe, or every time you want to breathe, you don't think, hey, it's time to breathe. So this is what the brainstem does. And the cerebellum controls voluntary movement. So this is like the movement of my hands, or when you're writing, you're moving your hands. So that's the voluntary movement, and the cerebellum does that. And then the neurons are cells that transmit electrical signals between each other and serve as the basis for how the nervous system works. You can see here in the diagram down here that this is a neuron, and it's comprised of three main parts. You have the cell body, which contains the nucleus, which kind of controls it, and then you have the dendrites, which are fibers that carry electrical impulses from the cell body, so away from the cell or to the cell body. And then axons carry electrical signals away from the cell body. So remember that dendrites is to the cell body and axons away from the cell body. And then for skeletal system, you should remember that the skeletal system is comprised of 206 bones, each with a different function. Bones are made up of minerals like calcium, and the skeletal system has a few major functions, specifically to support the body's weight, to protect organs, to move around, to develop red and white blood cells, and to store nutrients like calcium and iron. Think of, your skull, right? Your skull protects your brain, and a lot of bones in your body serve to protect these major organs. And then we have bone marrow, which is located within the bones, and there are two types: the yellow marrow, which mostly contain fat cells, and then red marrow, which is very important because it produces the red and white blood cells in our body. And then broken bones, of course, can heal in multiple stages, and you've looked at those stages in the reading you did for a skeletal system. And then down here we have a diagram of a bone, and then you have the yellow bone marrow here and the red bone marrow there. So just remember what the red and yellow marrow are for. So now we have the muscular system. And you should know that there are over 650 muscles in the human body and are located under our skin and cover our bones. So they're under the skin but over our bones. And then there are three types of muscles. The skeletal muscle, and these muscles are used to move around and are voluntary, so we can control them. So, like I said, voluntary, you control those movements. Smooth muscles are muscles that control the organs in our body, and these are involuntary. Cardiac muscles are muscles that pump our heart and move blood through our body. So there's also tendons, which tendons connect muscle to bones. And then, as you know, as we exercise, our muscles become stronger. And if we don't use them, they become weak. So if you spend a lot of time sitting down and you don't go outside and you're not active, your muscles can become very weak. Whereas if you go outside and exercise your muscles, they'll become stronger. And that's why it's important to exercise and why that's a component of a healthy lifestyle. And as we continue to practice an action over and over, muscles become more precise and we have greater control over them, which is known as muscle memory. So if you learn to play an instrument or you play a sport, the more you practice, the better control you have over your muscles, which is why oftentimes they say practice is perfect, because the more you practice, the more control you'll have over your muscles, which means you'll be better at the activity you're trying to do. And then we have the endocrine system. So the endocrine system is comprised of glands that release hormones into the bloodstream. And these hormones are very important because they regulate things like mood, growth, metabolism, our organs, and reproduction. And the most important gland would be the pituitary gland, which is the control center of all the other glands. And it helps regulate growth. The thyroid gland helps regulate metabolism, whereas the pancreas produces insulin, and which helps regulate blood sugar levels in the blood. And the thymus gland helps produce white blood cells, which are important for the immune system. And then adrenaline controls the body's fight or flight response. So fight or flight would be like a response where where it's flight, so you kind of move away from the danger, or fight, where you have this heightened level of awareness where you kind of want to fight the danger. So that's what the fight or flight response is, and how adrenaline plays a role in that. So now we have the circulatory and respiratory system. So the circulatory, to circulate, essentially means to travel around, and that means our circulatory system deals with blood circulating around our bodies. And red blood cells originate in the bone marrow, as we said before, and travel through blood vessels on the way to the heart. Blood gets oxygenated in the alveoli, which is a structure in our lungs. And then hemoglobin is what binds or connects the oxygen to the red blood cells. So remember, in the story, it's like a ticket onto the red blood cells. And then white blood cells find old blood cells and dissolve them to reuse them to for materials that make up the blood cells. So essentially it's like recycling. And then arteries take blood away from the heart, whereas veins take blood towards the heart. And then capillaries connect the arteries and the veins and help exchange food, oxygen, and waste between the blood and other cells in the body. So with the respiratory system, you have the alveoli, which are tiny air sacs in your lungs that absorb the oxygen you breathe in. And you have about 480 million alveoli located at the end of your lung. And more alveoli means more surface area for air to be exchanged, which is important, which is why we have so many of them, 480 million. And then, of course, breathing is involuntary, and we do not need to tell our body to breathe every time we need oxygen. This would be, you know, you couldn't imagine doing that. You'd have to control your breathing, which is why it's important that breathing is an involuntary thing we do. And then the diaphragm is a muscle that pushes and pulls upon our lungs. When it pulls, our lungs get bigger and we inhale. And when it pushes, our lungs get smaller and we exhale. And you can feel this, and you can feel the diaphragm if you just take deep breaths and feel around your stomach area, and you'll feel the diaphragm pulling and pushing on your lungs. So that's how breathing works. And of course, finally, we have the digestive and the excretory system. So, eating always starts with our mouth, and salivary ducts produce saliva, which helps start digestion in our mouths as we chew. So that's why when we when we're hungry or we're eating food, that's what why we produce saliva and why we produce more, especially when we're eating. And when we swallow, food enters our esophagus, which is similar to a pipe, and it travels to the stomach. As you explored in the lesson, because there's also the windpipe located near the esophagus, and that's why if you're talking when you're eating or you're not eating carefully or chewing your food, it could enter the windpipe, and you could start to choke, and that's very dangerous, which is why you should always be careful when you're eating and never talk while you're eating. And then the stomach helps break down the food even further with the help of gastric juices that are located in your stomach. And then as it keeps on traveling, it goes to the small intestine, which breaks down food even further so the body can absorb all the nutrients. So it can absorb all the nutrients. And then the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder help extract these nutrients even further. So the waste product that's left passes through the large intestine where all the water is absorbed, and the waste product becomes harder and harder until it's finally expelled from the body. And of course, it's expelled, you know where, and where you flush it away and it's gone. And then other ways waste is expelled from our body include the kidneys. The kidneys filter blood for waste and dispose of it through urine. And that's how waste from our blood is filtered out. And then sweat, which helps keep us cool, is water mixed in with waste salts, so salts we don't need, and that's why our sweat is salty, because it's all this waste product that's being expelled from the body. And you can see in that diagram just the path food would take through our body, and yeah, that's how the digestive system works. So that was a lot of information. Hopefully you got everything. If not, you can ask your teacher to go back and review some things, or I highly recommend going back into your at-home activities, looking through them, and getting any information you need. But now that we've reviewed every single system, it's time to talk about the final project that you'll be doing, and it's called the Body Systems Song or Poem. So for this project, you will be writing a song or a poem about your favorite or most interesting body system. Your favorite or most interesting body system that we've learned about. So these will be the main ones that I went over today. And this song or poem must be at least 12 lines long. You try to make it a little bit longer than 12 lines, but 12 lines will be the minimum. And don't make it like 2 or 3 words. Try to add some substance to the lines and make sure that um, there's good information. We want to make sure that you understand which body system you're talking about and you have all the key facts that you need. So, as I said, try to include all the facts about what the body system does or why it's important. And then it doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to be super, rhythmic or rhyme heavy. Just make it as fun and as informative as possible. This is a fun project. You want to make a song, a poem, make it fun, make it informative, and just make sure you understand what body system you're talking about and the key functions. And then if you want more information, just try looking at today's notes that we took. Today's notes were very brief, but they serve as a good overview for writing about the body systems. Or go to the past at-home activities, and each of these activities will have a lot more information about specific body systems, and then you can reference them. For more information. So you will have the rest of class to work on the poem, and I also recommend, if you have time, working on this over the weekend, because then you can make the poem or song as good as possible, and you can present it to your teacher, and then your teacher can decide if you're going to perform it or anything, or if you're comfortable performing it. But for now, just write a song, a poem about your favorite or most interesting body system, and that is our final project, and that is basically it for this entire unit. So I hope you learned a lot about cells and body systems and organs, and hopefully you can answer all the main questions from the beginning and all the main questions from the unit. So thank you, good luck with writing your poem, and have a great day.